going to be a $10 billion company.
Every founder has an unhealthy amount of optimism. It's definitely a necessary piece. The entrepreneurial DNA, I think you have it. That's why you're starting this podcast. We thought we were a gaming company, and now all of a sudden we're more attracted to AI companies. I was effectively pitching you to join the company on the back of a white paper.
For a while, it was just 4 of us. And then suddenly there was like 50 people. Then suddenly there was like 100, and then 150, then 200. But very exciting. And we went to this massive node sale, which was the largest node sale in history.
We raised roughly 140 to 160, depending on the price of ETH. We were this second mover. We moved quickly. We moved into a market that was FOMO'd. I don't think there was a single community in crypto that wasn't trying to get access to nodes. It was pure insanity. What's capturing attention in crypto? What's the mindshare look like? It was like 98% Aethir nodes. At Aethir, we build distributed GPU infrastructure. So you can think of us like an AWS or a Google Cloud, except we focus exclusively on GPUs. These are the chips predominantly produced by NVIDIA. They're the engine that powers AI, whether it's training new powerful AI models or actually the process of running that AI itself through what's called inference. The big difference between us and like a Google Cloud or an AWS is we don't actually own any of the infrastructure ourselves. We aggregate that infrastructure from owners and GPU owners all over the world. We're kind of like an Airbnb for GPUs or an Airbnb for data centers. And that's allowed us to scale our compute network really rapidly. We're in 93 different countries now, well over 200 different data centers. But yeah, it's very, very exciting.
What kind of made you want to start Aethir?
Yeah, I started building infrastructure from the very beginning of my career. I started in oil and gas, building big gas infrastructure projects, always in very remote locations. So what would happen was I'd kind of get on a plane, fly into a really remote spot. I'd be stuck there for like 6 or 8 weeks, and then I'd have kind of 2 weeks off, and then I'd go back again. And it was always, in a really remote kind of place, right? And you'd be living in a shipping container or out in the middle of the ocean, and it's a pretty terrible social environment, as you can imagine. Just a whole bunch of gruff old men kicking dirt. And it wasn't really something that I saw myself doing forever. It was a great way for me to get some pretty incredible experience, right? Like you're in a part of the world building a scale of project that you can only build in a remote place, right? So, I mean, I was a 23, 24-year-old kid fresh out of university, but I had almost $1 billion worth of scope under my purview, and you just couldn't do that in any sort of job in a city or city adjacent or anything like that. So it was very, very cool. But I realized pretty quickly that was not like the future for me. So I got the entrepreneurial itch, founded my first company, left behind my oil and gas days, and actually moved a manufacturing element to the project. It was a biotech company. I developed a couple of sensors that had some medical applications, and immersed myself in the startup world. Started to raise my first money, build the company from scratch, and that was a pretty exciting journey for me. Very, very challenging. But I worked on that for a couple of years before thinking, maybe infrastructure was where I did want to go, but not the same infrastructure as where I started. I was living in China. There was a lot of really interesting infrastructure jobs happening, particularly in the cloud space. They had this really innovative model of subsidizing cloud gaming through their telecommunication networks, right? The idea was they're, similar to India, a very mobile first population, right? WeChat was the world's first super app. Um, Everyone has a mobile device. Everyone does things on their mobile devices and not just telephones. They're really just like the personal computer for people. And what these telecommunication companies realized was that if they could just, um, I guess, make every device capable of playing pretty much any game, all of a sudden they could drive a huge amount of like data usage through their network, which would, earn them a significant bump in revenue, as that's how they charge their customers, right? So Dan, my co-founder, and I, we looked at that model. The cost of infrastructure was really the main barrier to entry here. So how could we kind of look at removing that? And our idea was, okay, let's build that network on the back of hardware we don't own. Let's use a decentralized compute network to scale and try and solve a similar problem. And that was really I guess, the origin story for us. That meant building a massive network of GPUs. Very quickly, it became apparent when everyone started like knocking on our door, asking to get access to these GPUs for this new thing called AI. It became like and a very interesting point in time for us, right? We thought we were a gaming company, and now all of a sudden we're more attracted to AI companies than gaming companies. How can we take advantage of this? We started to build products out to support those types of companies, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, no, it's been such a crazy journey for you. And I used to work at Aethir as well, so also a crazy journey for me in some ways.
One of our
But
one of our very first hires.
yeah, it's true. But I actually remember the time you interviewed me because um, I was interviewing with a bunch of companies, and you were like, this is going to be a $10 billion company. And I was like, what? That's crazy. But, obviously it didn't get to $10 billion yet, but it did get to like $4 billion, which in itself is a huge thing. So, I think when we spoke for the first time, it was literally just a white paper. How were you so confident that this was going to be something so big at the time?
Well, I think every founder has an unhealthy amount of optimism, right? It's definitely a necessary piece of the entrepreneurial DNA. I think you have it. It's why you're starting this podcast. You don't um, start a podcast like this if you think you're only going to be able to show it to, five or six people. You of course start it because you want to be you know, the next Joe Rogan, from a distribution perspective. So I think for entrepreneurs always have this unhealthy dose of optimism. Um, but I do think you need to have some sort of connection, obviously, with a realistic framework for building those outcomes. And I think for us, it was very much understanding the size of the market that we were looking at providing a solution for, and looking at the ability that current providers had to solve that problem. And this was something that we weren't able to see anywhere else, right? There was one company at the time in the crypto space that was touching GPUs, right? And that was Render. But Render was only really aggregating um, a consumer GPUs, right? So connecting a gaming PC and, or you've got a spare MacBook, connect that. No one was really kind of tackling the enterprise compute side. So for us, we thought, oh, wow, this is this incredible way to connect the advantages that we were seeing in the crypto world with the requirements that these big tech companies needed to kind of onboard into infrastructure like ours. So I think for us, we really thought, look at what these other providers are able to do, like Filecoin, like Render, uh, predominantly scaling on consumer hardware. We think there's multiples in there if we can scale on the back of enterprise infrastructure. Um, and, I think we were in many ways, very correct. right? I think valuations, yeah, as you said, yeah, hit close to 4 billion or over 4 billion. I can't remember at the moment. Um, and this cycle in particular, not many companies have been able to do that. I don't really even know if a single project that launched this cycle has hit that 10 billion in any way that they've maintained. So I think if we'd launched in a previous cycle, we definitely would be a $10 billion project by now. I just think there's a little bit of a maturation in how valuations stick in the sector. But maybe a better metric of performance for us would be revenues. So, I mean, we hit about 170 mil in annual recurring revenue just before the end
Wow.
of the year. Couple of contracts, yeah, a couple of contracts came to conclusion, so that's a little bit lower now. But demand is still, higher than ever for the infrastructure, which is pretty crazy. AI is not really going anywhere, as I think you'll agree. But we are something like 10 times more revenue than the nearest competitor. We have more revenue than all of the other competitors in the sector combined. So we've really taken advantage of our enterprise positioning, and that's put us in a really, really strong um, and sustainable growth pattern.
Wow. I don't even think many crypto companies can say they even have revenue. So to have, you know, that scale of revenue
It's a
is
foreign
incredible.
word.
Yeah, exactly. As long as the token does well, it's all good. So the company's obviously grown and it grew exponentially. Was there anything at the beginning that you were unsure about, but then you kept going and you had kind of some secret doubts about, but then you were like, no, I have to keep like chugging along and make sure that it grows.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of identity crises you go through as a founder, right? Hiring you, like you just mentioned. I was effectively pitching you to join the company on the back of a white paper, right? We were very early at that point. And the type of founder you are then compared to the type of founder you are when you've got 200 plus employees and a pretty significant balance sheet is very, very different. But that journey is really a series of steps that challenge that, I guess, imposter syndrome you have. Who am I to be hiring a person like this? They're smarter than me. They're more qualified than me. They have more experience than me. How do I build a team of people that are successful and capable in a sector that I have no experience in? Right? A company is a collection of a large number of very skilled individuals and skill driven workflows. And as a founder, you can't be an expert in all of them. And you really want to be hiring people that are more capable than you in general. So I think that that's a really challenging thing to overcome. And it's something that, I leaned on Dan a lot. And to be honest, Dan has done most of this, right? He's the CEO, I'm the CSO. He steps in far more from an operational perspective, and it's been fantastic leaning on him. I think early on, him and I realizing some of the differences in our skill sets and what each of us were kind of maybe more better able to maximally contribute um, through. That was a big thing. So yeah, I would say pretty much all of it is um, scary, and you don't ever really think you're always doing the right thing or have the best ideas. You just have to kind of keep moving forward as best you can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's actually very interesting that you mentioned that it's so different to be a founder for a company that's essentially like a baby versus, when you have 200 plus employees. What was the difference like for you? And especially because I know the rate at which Aether grew and it was very quick. So I don't know if you got like an adjustment period there. But what was that change like for you?
Yeah, it's very scary. I think you let go of a lot of control, right? You have to hire people that report to you instead of teams reporting to you. You have to get a lot better at managing these types of people. The structures you use to manage those people, the KPIs, and how you set performance, and it requires taking a little bit of a step back, as I mentioned, kind of reducing your maybe control over all of the nitty gritty, but focusing on the more strategic side of the business, right? Um, how do you work with these really talented people that you've hired to kind of progress in a direction that is, not held back by become a bit of a bottleneck because you need to approve everything or things need to go through you all the time. So building a team where you do have the um, relationship and the connections and the systems with the team that allow you to trust them to be autonomous, I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, I think even for me, it was very overwhelming at the time because I remember for a while it was just four of us. And then suddenly there was like 50 people, then suddenly there was like 100, and then 150, then 200. And I was like, wow, I don't even know everyone at this point. But, very exciting. And we went
Yeah.
through this massive node sale, which was the largest node sale in history. So, what was the story behind that? How did that happen? What were you expecting? Did the results like surprise you as well? What was the whole story behind the note sale?
Yeah, it was a hugely surprising and exciting outcome. I think we positioned ourselves very well for success. We raised roughly 100 was $140 million, I think, or something around that, 140 to 160, depending on the price of ETH, and it was pretty incredible, right? The story there goes, we were working closely with a team called Impossible Finance. They had, been helping us from the start and in a semi-advisory way, really kind of acting as a sounding board for a lot of our tokenomics and um, structuring the back end of the infrastructure in the business. And they mentioned that they had seen this really innovative new structure pioneered, right? It was called a node sale. One project had done it, uh, and they thought this might be something interesting for Aether. There wasn't necessarily a direct connection there yet between how the node sale would function within the kind of the structure that Aether has as a company. But it was just proposed. It was kind of like, hey, this company did something on a launch pad. Maybe Aether should do something on a launch pad, right? That was like the level of detail. Anyway, I remember going and reading up a little bit on how this node sale had been structured, and I realized that there was this roadmap that we'd actually been building coincidentally around the same time, and it was kind of this what we considered this path to decentralization, right? It was like, okay, we're going to launch it at kind of like a, I don't know, 30% decentralized, and we're going to be progressively doing things that will be, pushing us further along our road to, overall kind of a greater state of decentralization in line with, Dan and my vision. And one of those pieces, which was further down the line, something like a 9 months to 12 months later on the roadmap, was decentralization of the checker node, right? Um, and within Aether's ecosystem, we kind of have three primary roles, right? We have the GPU container, right, which is really where the GPU engine sits. We have the checker, which is kind of like this police force, right? So one of the ways that networks like ours get messed with is people will contribute a GPU and they'll say, "Hey, I'm a H100," right? And actually, there'll be a crappy version, right? And by saying they're at H100, they're trying to trick the network into thinking they're a Ferrari when they're actually like a Toyota, right? And obviously, if you're a Ferrari, people will pay you more for rides, right? The analogy is the same. If you trick the network into thinking you're an expensive GPU, you'll get bigger rewards than if you're a lower end GPU. So there's like this. There's like this incentive for bad actors to come and try and convince the network that they are contributing hardware they're not. The checker is like the policeman. The checker is constantly out there, oh, you say you're this, are you actually this? Show me
Mm.
the evidence. I'm going to do a little like network test, right? And one of the things that we really wanted from the beginning was to have the police force be separate from the protocol, right? So similar to a separation between like church and state, right? The idea of having the church connected to the state has always been something that kind of Western society thinks is, not a great idea. So this separation of church and state is kind of a powerful social construct, right? And the same goes in our network. We wanted this separation of like the police force because we wanted them to be um, uh, not susceptible to bias. We didn't want them to be able to be kind of bribed, right? Like by having 100,000 independent policemen, right? You'd have to bribe 10,000 individual policemen to convince the network that you were a Ferrari when you're a Toyota. Like it's just not possible. So
Mm.
I'm taking a long time to explain this, but what I realized was that this structure that we wanted to decentralize in the future, that was about creating this decentralized police force or this decentralized network of policing nodes, we could really take that, bring the development of that network forward, and use it and structure access to it via a node sale. And the way that we did it, I think, was quite innovative, right? And that was, if you think about the New York taxi system, right? If you want to own a New York taxi, you have to buy what's called a taxi medallion, right? And a taxi medallion will cost you, I don't know, let's say it costs you $1 million, right? You pay that $1 million. And the reason you pay that $1 million is because it gives you permission to drive the yellow taxi, right?
Mm.
And everyone in New York knows what the yellow taxi represents. The yellow taxi is a trust network, right? If you put your arm up or if you whistle, right, and a yellow taxi stops, you know that you can trust that you can get in, you trust that you can pay it, and you trust that you get out, at the other end. And if you have a bad experience, you can complain to the network that they exist within, right? That's how the system works. However, you also know if you buy that taxi medallion as a taxi driver and you get that yellow taxi, but if you just leave it in your driveway, you're not going to earn any money, right? You actually need to participate in the system to get the reward that buying the medallion gives you. And the same goes for us. So effectively, what we sold in our node sale were licenses to be the policeman in the network. And um, people could go and they could say, all right, if I buy a license to be a policeman in your network, here is the salary for being a policeman. Just like the yellow taxi driver will have a salary, or they'll have revenue that they generate from all of the journeys that they provide. And you make an assessment and you go, okay, if the salary for being a policeman is $10,000 a year, I'm going to be willing to pay $5,000 to get access to 10,000, right? Someone else might pay 9,000 to get access to 10,000, right? And that's where these really interesting kind of market dynamics and this supply demand structure and everything was kind of built in. But it was incredibly new. Once again, I think we were just at the right place in the right time. But we did definitely engineer a structure that allowed us to overperform, right? As you can imagine, if someone says, hey, I'm going to raise 20 million, right? The maximum they can raise is 20 million, right? But if someone says, hey, I've got 100 really valuable tickets, how much is everyone going to pay? Sky's the limit, right? It's just about
Mm,
finding the right buyers and getting the right distribution for your sales structure.
yeah. What do you think Aether did right as opposed to, because a lot of people after that tried to do the note sale as well. Do you think it was just like a first mover advantage, or what do you think Aether did right that they were really able to knock it out of the park in that way?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think, first of all, it was a second mover advantage, right?
Yes.
That's
True,
critical,
true.
right? Second mover advantage. We quickly followed um, a successful model. So what actually happened was the other node sale launched. A lot of people made a lot of money, but way more people didn't make money and missed out, right? Because the model wasn't popular yet. And so all of a sudden, we launched straight into this FOMO and this oh my God, look at all these people that made so much money on this other one that was like less big, right? We got to get into this one. And that was just like the perfect conditions. I think market conditions were also very good at the time. Ethereum had hit 4K for the very first time, right? So there was like a lot of like excitement in the market. This was before the whole crypto ecosystem shut the bed. Um, it was great, and I think we we had a system where it made so much sense to have a node sale, right? Or at least the node sale logically worked within our infrastructure. Just like I explained that whole policeman thing, a lot of projects that tried to do node sales later were were not necessarily doing node sales because their network benefited from having a network of nodes. They were more doing them because they were taking advantage of a fundraising structure that was proving successful. So I think for us, we were this second mover, right? We moved quickly. We moved into a market that was FOMO'd, a market that was performing because ETH was doing very well, and it was very logical and reasonable why we were doing what we were doing, and everyone understood it. And I think we were incredibly good at explaining that to people. And I don't think I've ever seen it happen since. But I don't think there was a single community in crypto that wasn't trying to get access to nodes, right? It was pure insanity. I think we literally captured, like, if you were to you look at one of these InfoFi dashboards of like what's capturing attention in crypto, what's the mind share look like? It was like 98% Aether nodes. There was literally not another thing that anyone was talking about for about a solid week.
100%. And it was such an exciting time. I remember, like, it felt euphoric, it felt amazing. And I remember doing all the posts where we were like posting how many nodes we've sold, and it was so much fun. But obviously for you now, you're kind of powering AI at scale almost in a way. So, and I know we've talked about this a lot, which is why I also wanted to discuss this on camera. But there's a lot of, pros and cons of AI that people talk about all the time. And obviously, everyone knows the pros. It's very, very useful. Obviously, it's increased production and all of that. But there's also some doomer arguments around AI. So, is there anything about those arguments that actually genuinely worries you in this moment?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You know, um, it's hard not to be worried, right? I think there's two main buckets of worry for me, right? One is obviously the very existential um, bucket, right? Which is, is AI going to extinct us all? What does that look like? Why should I be worried about that? And then the other side um, is AI just going to have such an outrageous impact on the economy and the workforce that it's difficult for me to predict what things will look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now. You know, um, those two things are the things that I kind of worry about when I'm in my worry phase. I think if you look at on the existential threat side of things, if you look at you know uh, studies and conversations that are being had with the top AI minds in the world, right? And these are not, random PhDs sitting in kind of basements somewhere. This is like the top greatest minds, public minds, people that have public profiles, right? And you ask them, what's the chance that, AI is going to result in the extinction of the human race within the next 10 years? They'll say 1 in 3, or 1 in 4. And you're like, doesn't that sound like a lot? You know? And and you're like, that's pretty scary, And then you try and then you poke that bear, you dig a little bit deeper, and the more you read, the more scary it gets. And the I think the scariest part of it all is not necessarily the fact that you know AI is going to do all these things. It's the fact that there's no way to stop it in any reasonable sense, right? Because we have this technology, the most powerful technology that's ever existed. It's more powerful and more impactful than electricity. It's more impactful than um, crops, right? It's going to change society more than we anything that's ever been invented ever, right? It's effectively like a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, the biggest, most powerful pot of gold like ever, right? And the company or the country or the organization that gets to that pot of gold first, right, is the winner of everything forever after that, right? There's no other race. There's just one race. This is the race. That's the only pot of gold. It's the last pot of gold. And the whoever gets there wins it and then wins everything forever. Right. And if that's the case, then no one is going to slow down ever. Why would they? Because let's say the US government comes out tomorrow and says, think AI is super dangerous. We're going to stop. Um, we're going to stop training super intelligent AI. What's China going to do? They're going to be like, woohoo, time to win the race. There's just too much game theory at play. Like the risk of not being first, in many ways exceeds the threat of total human extinction, and that's pretty wild. And then on the other side of things, you're just seeing such a rapid capability gain across the spectrum with regards to AI and agents and tools that people use that incorporate AI, and you just think to yourself, what's the economy gonna look like? Like is some hedge fund just going to develop some epic trading algorithm that's going to earn it more money than anyone else, and then all of a sudden, the economy just shits itself? Or is the is it going to impact jobs so much that um, before we've got something like universal basic income, there's like this like gap where people are just so disenfranchised that we have just like social unrest, and I don't know, it's just really weird. Also, if you think about it, the way that value accrues in an AI first economy is very much to the asset owner, right? So let's say Claude Cowork, right, just came out. Let's imagine it's like a little bit more powerful than it is, and all of a sudden, um, companies that previously needed 10 people can now do the same amount of work with just 3 people, right? When a tool like Claude Cowork comes out, everyone's like, oh, sweet, I can be so much more efficient, right? But that's not actually how it works. What actually happens is, the boss of the company goes, oh, I don't need 10 people anymore. I only need 3, right? So those like 7 people get removed, and all of a sudden, the boss of the company now has a far more efficient company, and the profits are just like coalescing at the top, right? Um, it's 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 a scary thing when you think about how really big companies will do that, and the scale of the value that'll accrue to those big companies, and how much pressure they will then be able to exert on other areas of the market that they're currently not touching or potentially not participating in, right? And they can just rinse repeat, and I just see this vacuum of value kind of accruing to just a smaller and smaller number of people and organizations, and that's a pretty scary thing. That's how wealth inequality turns into um, revolution. It's a I don't know, just a bit scary, a bit hard to predict, a bit wild.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, the best case scenario is that there's so much production in the economy that everyone just gets like universal basic income. And then you'll always have people who are more enterprising, so they'll obviously, they'll still be like wealth inequality, but just everyone's still covered, basically, at least a little bit. So yeah, and the last question that I have for you is there anything that you're particularly excited about in crypto, in AI for 2026?
Um, I am very excited about Aether and our connection to Axe Compute or AGPU, right? So if you may or may not know, Aether did a digital asset treasury play around the end of the year. We raised roughly 344 million. And reverse merge it into a Nasdaq listed company. So there now is a Nasdaq listed entity. The stock ticker is AGPU, and it effectively, um, in many ways, and I have to be very careful about how I phrase things, being it being a public company, but effectively it is a broadly a representation of Aether and Aether's interests on Nasdaq, right? Which is super cool. I think um, having this kind of direct connection to capital markets, I think is one of the only real points of alpha that are left in the crypto world, right? I think we've seen since like 1010 how fragmented and strange the crypto market seems to be functioning, right? It very much seems to be almost subject to a lot of manipulation from big fish, and having this kind of connection to the capital markets, I think, is one way that you can kind of hedge your exposure to that sort of behavior. And I think it's going to be a huge thing for Aether moving forward. So I'm very excited for a natural evolution and maturation of that relationship between the two companies. I think um, I'm bullish on crypto in general. I think that as agents and tools become, more universally adopted for um, agentic workflows, right? Things like Claude Cowork, right? that has, come out and people can now use that. All agents will need payment rails, and it'll make the most sense for those payment rails to be on crypto, right? Agents can't get bank accounts, but they can certainly get crypto wallets. I mean, you'd know a lot about that stuff with Kite. They were very much pioneering a lot of that infrastructure. And on the AI side, I'm very excited at the moment by something that I think you should look into, Tanya, and it's called Claude Bot, CLAWD, like claw. It's a little lobster.
Yeah.
Claude Bot. Check it out. It's pretty insane. It is an unlimited memory AI agent that can interact with the world fully. It's the most like adjacent to an Iron Man Jarvis type thing that I've ever seen. It is very, very cool. Takes a bit of setup. But it someone like you could definitely do it. And it would be a worthwhile experiment for you. But I'm having a lot of fun playing and setting up my Claude at the moment.
I love that. I'll check it out for sure. But yeah, I think 2026 is going to be super exciting, and I'm sure for Aethir as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And yeah.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Tanya. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Off the Record. If you like this episode, like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps the podcast grow. You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.